Upon roast piggy. Mankind, says a Chinese manuscript, which my friend M was obliging enough to read and explain to me, for the first 70,000 ages ate their meat raw, clawing or biting it from the living animal, just as they do in Abyssinia to this day. This period is not obscurely hinted at by their great Confucius in the second chapter of his Mundane Mutations, where he designates a kind of golden age by the term Chou Fang, literally the cook's holiday. The manuscript goes on to say that the art of roasting, or rather broiling, which I take to be the elder brother, was accidentally discovered in the manner following. The swineherd Hoti, having gone out in the woods one morning, as his manner was, to collect masts for his hogs, left his cottage in the care of his eldest son Bobo, a great lubberly boy, who being fond of playing with fire, as younkers of his age commonly are, let some sparks escape into a bundle of straw, which kindling quickly, spread the conflagration over every part of their poor mansion, till it was reduced to ashes. Together with the cottage, a sorry antediluvian makeshift of a building, you may think it, what was of much more importance, a fine litter of new-farrowed pigs, no less than 9 in number, perished. China pigs had been esteemed a luxury all over the East, from the remotest periods that we read of. Bobo was in the utmost consternation, as you may think, not so much for the sake of the tenement, which his father and he could easily build up again with a few dry branches, and the labor of an hour or two at any time, as for the loss of the pigs. While he was thinking what he should say to his father, and wringing his hands over the smoking remnants of one of those untimely sufferers, an odor assailed his nostrils, unlike any scent which he had before experienced. What could it proceed from? Not from the burnt cottage. He had smelt that smell before. Indeed, this was by no means the first accident of the kind which had occurred through the negligence of this unlucky young firebrand. Much less did it resemble that of any known herb, weed, or flower. A premonitory moistening at the same time overflowed his nether lip. He knew not what to think. He next stooped down to feel the pig, if there were any signs of life in it. He burnt his fingers, and to cool them, he applied them in his booby fashion to his mouth. Some of the crumbs of the scorched skin had come away with his fingers, and for the first time in his life, in the world's life indeed, for before him no man had known it, he tasted, crackling. Again he felt and fumbled at the pig. It did not burn him so much now. Still, he licked his finger from a sort of habit. The truth at length broke into his slow understanding, that it was the pig that smelt so, and the pig that tasted so delicious. And surrendering himself up to the newborn pleasure, he fell to tearing up whole handfuls of the scorched skin with the flesh next it, and was cramming it down his throat in his beastly fashion, when his sire entered amid the smoking rafters, armed with retributory cudgel, and finding how affairs stood, began to rain blows upon the young rogue's shoulders, as thick as hailstones, which Bobo heeded not any more than if they had been flies. The tickling pleasure which he experienced in his lower regions had rendered him quite callous to any inconveniences he might feel in those remote quarters. His father might lay on, but he could not beat him from his pig, till he had fairly made an end of it, when, becoming a little more sensible of his situation, something like the following dialogue ensued. "Ye first taste. You graceless whelp, what have you got there devouring? Is it not enough that you have burnt me down 3 houses with your dog's tricks, and be hanged to you, but you must be eating fire, and I know not what. What have you got there, I say? Oh, father, the pig, do come and taste how nice the burnt pig eats." The ears of Hoti tingled with horror. He cursed his son, and he cursed himself that ever he should beget a son that should eat burnt pig. Bobo, whose scent was wonderfully sharpened since morning, soon raked out another pig, and fairly rending it asunder, thrust the lesser half by main force into the fists of Hoti, still shouting out, "Eat, eat, eat the burnt pig, father, only taste, O Lord," with such-like barbarous ejaculations, cramming all the while as if he would choke. "Hoti beateth his son." Hoti trembled every joint, while he grasped the abominable things, wavering whether he should not put his son to death for an unnatural young monster, when the crackling scorching his fingers, as it had done his son's, and applying the same remedy to them, he in his turn tasted some of its flavor which, make what sour mouths he would for a pretense, proved not altogether displeasing to him. In conclusion, for the manuscript here is a little tedious, both father and son fairly sat down to the mess, and never left off till they had dispatched all that remained of the litter. Bobo was strictly enjoined not to let the secret escape, for the neighbors would certainly have stoned them for a couple of abominable wretches who could think of improving upon the good meat which God had sent them. Nevertheless, strange stories got about. It was observed that Hoti's cottage was burnt down now more frequently than ever, nothing but fires from this time forward. Some would break out in broad day, others in the night time. As often as the sow farrowed, so sure was the house of Hoti to be in a blaze, and Hoti himself, which was the more remarkable, instead of chastising his son, seemed to grow more indulgent to him than ever. At length they were watched, the terrible mystery discovered, and father and son summoned to take their trial at Pekin, then an inconsiderable assize town. Evidence was given, the obnoxious food itself produced in court, and verdict about to be pronounced, when the foreman of the jury begged that some of the burnt pig, of which the culprits stood accused, might be handed into the box. He handled it, and they all handled it, and burning their fingers, as Bobo and his father had done before them, and nature prompting to each of them the same remedy, against the face of all the facts, and the clearest charge which judge had ever given, to the surprise of the whole court, townsfolk, strangers, reporters, and all present, without leaving the box, or any manner of consultation whatever, they brought in a simultaneous verdict of not guilty. Ye family rejoiceth. The judge, who was a shrewd fellow, winked at the manifest iniquity of the decision, and when the court was dismissed, went privily and bought up all the pigs that could be had for love or money. In a few days his lordship's townhouse was observed to be on fire. The thing took wing, and now there was nothing to be seen but fires in every direction. Fuel and pigs grew enormously dear all over the district. The insurance offices won, and all shut up shop. People built slighter and slighter every day, until it was feared that the very science of architecture would in no long time be lost to the world. Thus this custom of firing houses continued, till in process of time, says my manuscript, a sage arose like our Locke, who made a discovery, that the flesh of swine, or indeed of any other animal, might be cooked, burnt, as they call it, without the necessity of consuming a whole house to dress it. Then first began the rude form of a gridiron. Roasting by the string or spit came in a century or two later, I forget in whose dynasty. By such slow degrees, concludes the manuscript, do the most useful and seemingly the most obvious arts make their way among mankind. Ye mystery is solved. Without placing too implicit faith in the account above given, it must be agreed that if a worthy pretext for so dangerous an experiment as setting houses on fire, especially in these days, could be assigned in favor of any culinary object, that pretext and excuse might be found in roast pig. Of all the delicacies in the whole mundus edibilis, I will maintain it to be the most delicate, princeps obsoniarum. I speak not of your grown porkers, things between pig and pork, those hobbydehoys, but a young and tender suckling, under a moon old, guiltless as yet of the sty, with no original speck of the ama immendidi, the hereditary failing of the first parent, yet manifest, his voice as yet not broken, but something between a childish treble and a grumble, the mild forerunner, or preludium, of a grunt. He must be roasted. I am not ignorant that our ancestors ate them seethed or boiled, but what a sacrifice of the exterior tegument. Ye jury giveth its verdict. There is no flavor comparable, I will contend, to that of the crisp, tawny, well-watched, not over-roasted, crackling, as it is well called. The very teeth are invited to their share of the pleasure at this banquet in overcoming the coy, brittle resistance, with the adhesive oleaginous, oh call it not fat, but an indefiable sweetness growing up too. In the tender blossoming of fat, fat cropped in the bud, taken in the shoot in the first innocence. The cream and quintessence of the child pig's yet pure food, the lean, no lean, but a kind of animal manna, or rather fat and lean, if it must be so blended and running into each other, that both together make but one ambrosian result, or common substance. Behold him while he is doing, it seemeth rather a refreshing warmth, than a scorching heat, that he is so passive to. How equably he twirleth round the string, now he is just done, to see the extreme sensibility of that tender age, he hath wept out his pretty eyes, radiant jellies, shooting stars. See him in the dish, his second cradle, how meek he lieth. Wouldst thou have had this innocent grow up to the grossness and indocility which too often accompany maturer swinehood? 10 to 1, he would have proved a glutton, a sloven, an obstinate, disagreeable animal, wallowing in all manner of filthy conversation. From these sins he is happily snatched away. Ere sin could blight or sorrow fade, death came with timely care. His memory is odoriferous, no clown curseth, while his stomach half rejecteth the rank bacon, no coal-heaver bolteth him in reeking sausages. He hath a fair sepulchre in the grateful stomach of the judicious epicure, and for such a tomb might be content to die. Ye judge speculateth. He is the best of sappers, pineapple is great. She is indeed almost too transcendent, a delight, if not sinful yet so like to sinning, that really a tender conscience person would do well to pause, too ravishing for mortal taste. She woundeth and excoriateth the lips that approach her, like lovers' kisses, she biteth. She is a pleasure bordering on pain from the fierceness and insanity of her relish, but she stoppeth at the palate. She meddleth not with the appetite, and the coarsest hunger might barter her consistently for a mutton chop. Pig, let me speak his praise, is no less provocative of the appetite than he is satisfactory to the criticalness of the censorious palate. The strong man may batten on him, and the weakling refuseth not his mild juices. Unlike to mankind's mixed characters, a bundle of virtues and vices, inexplicably intertwisted, and not to be unravelled without hazard, he is good throughout. No part of him is better or worse than another. He helpeth, as far as his little means extend, all around. He is the least envious of banquets. He is all neighbours fair. Ye sage maketh a discovery. I am one of those who freely and ungrudgingly impart a share of the good things of this life which fall to their lot, few as mine are in this kind, to a friend. I protest I take as great an interest in my friend's pleasures, his relishes, and proper satisfactions, as in mine own. Presents, I often say, in dear absence. Hares, pheasants, partridges, snipes, barn-door chickens, those tame velatic fowl, capons, plovers, brawn, barrels of oysters, I dispense as freely as I receive them. I love to taste them, as it were, upon the tongue of my friend. But a stop must be put somewhere. One would not, like Lear, give everything. I make my stand upon pig. Methinks it is an ingratitude to the giver of all good flavors to extra-domiciliate or send out of the house, slightingly, under pretext of friendship, or I know not what. A blessing so particularly adapted, predestined, I may say, to my individual palate, it argues an insensibility. Ye pig twirleth. I remember a touch of conscience in this kind at school. My good old aunt, who never parted from me at the end of a holiday without stuffing a sweetmeat or some nice thing into my pocket, had dismissed me one evening with a smoking plum cake, fresh from the oven. In my way to school, it was over London Bridge, a grey-headed old beggar saluted me. I have no doubt at this time of day that he was a counterfeit. I had no pence to console him with, and in the vanity of self-denial and the very coxcombry of charity, schoolboy-like, I made him a present of the whole cake. I walked on a little, buoyed up, as one is on such occasions, with a sweet soothing of self-satisfaction. But before I had got to the end of the bridge, my better feelings returned, and I burst into tears, thinking how ungrateful I had been to my good aunt to go and give her good gift away to a stranger that I had never seen before, and who might be a bad man for aught I knew. And then I thought of the pleasure my aunt would be taking in thinking that I myself, and not another, would eat her nice cake, and what should I say to her the next time I saw her? How naughty I was to part with her pretty present, and the odor of that spicy cake came back upon my recollection, and the pleasure and the curiosity I had taken in seeing her make it, and her joy when she sent it to the oven, and how disappointed she would feel that I had never had a bit of it in my mouth at last, and I blamed my impertinent spirit of almsgiving and out-of-place hypocrisy of goodness. And above all, I wished never to see the face again of that insidious, good-for-nothing, old grey impostor. Our ancestors were nice in their method of sacrificing these tender victims. We read of pigs whipped to death with something of a shock, as we hear of any other obsolete custom. The age of discipline is gone by, or it would be curious to inquire, in a philosophical light merely, what effect this process might have towards intenerating and dulcifying a substance, naturally so mild and dulcet as the flesh of young pigs. It looks like refining a violet. Yet we should be cautious, while we condemn the inhumanity, how we censure the wisdom of the practice. It might impart a gusto. Ye aromatic pig. I remember an hypothesis, argued upon by the young students, when I was at St. Omer's, and maintained with much learning and pleasantry on both sides, whether, supposing that the flavor of a pig who obtained his death by whipping per flagellationem extremum superadded a pleasure upon the palate of a man more intense than any possible suffering we can conceive in the animal, is man justified in using that method of putting the animal to death? I forget the decision. His sauce should be considered. Decidedly, a few bread crumbs done up with his liver and brains and a dash of mild sage. But banish, dear Mrs. Cook, I beseech you, the whole onion tribe. Barbecue your whole hogs to your palate, steep them in shallots, stuff them out with plantations of the rank and guilty garlic. You cannot poison them or make them stronger than they are. But consider, he is a weakling, a flower.